there's an article that was sent to me by Will, one of our producers here, a tale of two FOIAs. And you talked about two FOIA requests that you make in regards to Anthony Fauci's testimony, or once he testified in front of Senator Rand Paul. Why don't you give us a synopsis of that, and then I'll have some questions for you.
No problem. So in May, when I began my investigation into the origins of COVID-19 and the statements that Dr. Fauci made to Rand Paul during the Senate hearing, I came to find that some of the information that I was looking for just wasn't available on their website. I believe it likely was available, through a FOIA request, which I made two separate FOIA requests to the NIH and the NIAID regarding the information that I was seeking. The responses that I got for those were basically summed up saying, well, Red State isn't really a journalistic outfit, journalist outfit, and you're not a real journalist, so we don't have to expedite this. You'll get it when we get around to it. So they put it off and told me it would be at least a year before I would see any of that data. Meanwhile, a couple weeks ago, I ended up.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but what did they base that on, saying basically Red State and you're not a real journalist? And is this something that you'd encountered before?
Well, at Red State, we're not exactly
CNN or MSNBC.
We're no strangers. We're no strangers to the fact that people don't consider us legitimate.
Okay.
The fact is, we take the time to research and provide the sourcing and everything the rest of it. We've actually had a lower retraction rate than CNN has. So the fact is that we actually are more reliable. We do have this. So it's not any suggestion that we were getting it. And we would expect to be getting it from the left. But when government organizations pick and choose who is and isn't engaging in journalistic work is a problem.
That was my concern. That's why I asked. So, okay, so go ahead, Scott.
So a few weeks later, actually a few weeks ago, I ended up sending another FOIA request to the CDC on a separate issue, just out of nowhere. The CDC not only granted my expediting request, but said, yeah, we'll get you the information right away. I got contacted. I actually did a phone call with their data guy. He was really helpful and courteous and said, yeah, no problem. We got it taken care of. So how come two government agencies, which are both governed by the HHS, can come up with two different determinations about FOIAs when essentially I'm doing the same thing, that is engaging in a journalistic practice?
Yeah, that's okay. So reading through the article, and I'd like to know if this has anything to do. I'd like to know if this has anything to do with it. You say here in the article, within the last 2 weeks, I had to again request information from the CDC regarding another investigative piece I wrote, this time regarding CDC Director Walensky's husband's access to a multi-million-dollar grant for his 4-month-old company. Dr. Loren Walensky then went on to sell his million shares in March of 2021 after a $16.9 million grant had been issued to his company. By the way, I want you to respond to that. But by the way, I do want to say to the audience, I know The Intercept is getting the credit now, but legit, Red State was talking about this in May of 2021. I'm happy that everyone is involved in this. But I do want to say on the record that Red State is absolutely legit, and you can check them out, redstate.com. This is research that they've been doing for quite some time. Having said that, Scott, I do want to talk a little bit about Walensky's husband making some bank here. I don't want you to breeze past that. That's very significant.
It certainly is, and my FOIA request was more into the idea of the messaging behind it. Obviously, I had the documentation to prove what I wrote about it, so I didn't necessarily need any additional documentation. It was that that we had a public affairs officer from the CDC reach out to me and my sources to essentially threaten us and question the veracity of our statements, not by saying here's the actual facts and the counterfacts and you've got to correct your article, but more saying you better watch what you write because we're watching.
Unbelievable.
And so Yeah, so I ended up FOIAing all of his communications. I'm still waiting for the response on it, but I have been in touch with the CDC, and they are expediting my request.
All right, so the CDC, I mean, the CDC is seemingly, well, I guess not the CDC, but the other, what is it, the NIH or the NIA, that you're having a more difficult...
The NIH and the NIAID.
Okay,
yeah.
The NIAID, you're having a more difficult time with, and two same requests, both under the HHS. And why do you suspect the NIAID is giving you so much trouble?
Well, it really did kind of make some sense or really raise some flags for me when, after I requested some communications from certain people, which an anonymous source within the NIAID had given me, they immediately backed up and said, no, we don't. Why would you want these people's information? And the point is, well, if it's insignificant, why does it matter that I'm requesting it?
Sure.
To me, it raised a lot of red flags. They've continually asked that I remove a lot of my requests or part of my requests in my FOIA request, which I've, again, refused to do because I want the complete and total record. I don't want to shoot from the hip off of the words of one or two people. I want to know what the whole picture is, and I want to write that story so I can educate readers across this country as to what exactly is happening within the workings of their federal government.
All right, that's good. So, all right, let's get to what's happening with Fauci and this. What you started to report on in May of 2021, when you first started reporting about these documents that basically were proving that Fauci was involved in this gain of function via, whether it's through a subcontractor, EcoHealth Alliance, and EcoHealth Alliance contracting out to the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Give us a synopsis of that.
So essentially, after Anthony Fauci gave his testimony to Rand Paul that said unequivocally that the U.S. did not fund gain-of-function research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, I decided that's a pretty easy statement to, there's public records of all the funding, grant funding, so it's a very easy statement to confirm true or false. Within about 4 or 5 hours of doing my research, I came to find that his statements were completely false. Not only were we seeing that Dr. Xinzheng Li, who is the director, one of the directors of research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, not only was she receiving funding through grants from the NIH and the NIAID, but so was Peter Daszak, who was then who's the president of EcoHealth Alliance, who was then funneling the funds through directly to the Wuhan Institute of Virology. There was another player in this, a scientist out of the University of North Carolina by the name of Dr. Ralph Barrick. He's kind of the quote-unquote godfather of gain-of-function research, and he
Scott,
let
me interrupt for just a sec. We only have 20 seconds before the break. Can you stick with me till after the break? I want to make sure that we hear everything you have to say regarding this.
Absolutely, I'll stick through.
Okay, all right. I'm speaking with Scott Hounsell of RedState.com, and he's talking about the fact that Fauci knew all the time. Seems like the CDC is covering up. We'll be back.